Dear friends, hello. I'm very sorry about technical issues. I'm just learning, and yeah, it could be a sabotage, of course. So very happy to see you tonight. Tonight we have a very nice guest from the UK, and what's special about this guest is that it's a military, uh, and my good friend, one of those YouTube channels that uh, were following this invasion in Ukraine since early days, since day one, basically. And with great pleasure, I would like to introduce my good friend Ryan. Wait a second. Yeah. So, Ryan, it's very nice to see you tonight. Please say hello to our viewers and tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hey, Starsky, thanks for having us on the channel. Firstly, I just want to say I've been a massive fan of you and your coverage of Ukraine since the start. You actually popped up in my feed on YouTube one day, and I was hooked on your content ever since. So thanks for the coverage over there. It's very much appreciated, certainly where I'm coming from. But yeah, everyone, my name's Ryan. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando. I'm no longer active service. I've been out the Marines for a little over 5 years now. And yeah, I found myself on YouTube covering a little bit of the war in Ukraine and trying to give a different perspective on the situation, how it's displayed to us in the United Kingdom. So yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, and it's a big pleasure to have you tonight. Not only because you were among the first people on the internet who talked about this invasion in my current country since the first day, but also because you are the first British soldier invited to my podcast, and it's a
All
big
right,
honor
great.
to have you. It's a big honor to me, actually.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realise that. That's well, there's a first for some things.
Yeah. So people around the world are currently watching the stream, the live stream from the United Nations General Assembly. Were you able to see it by any chance?
No, like you said, today has been, well, we spoke offline with a few things, but yeah, I've been in bed with a headache at the moment, so I'm lucky to be here in the first place. But no, what was your thoughts on did you manage to see it or?
Yeah, actually, I saw the speech of American President Biden, also the speech of Latvian President,
Mhm.
Slovenia. Then there was president of Moldova, and basically everybody were talking about Ukraine and talking about the
Mhm.
invasion, and the thing that united them was that they were basically saying they were going to support Ukraine until it's victorious.
Yeah,
So it's very nice to see that everybody has, this unity, right?
yeah,
Which is amazing. Again, like to me, a Ukrainian, uh, it's still very unusual to see Ukraine in like headlines and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I'm very glad that we are supported so much.
I think so. Like you say, I think the UN is very supportive of it. You just have to look at the countries involved. Both militarily and non-militarily, indirect or direct. There's a lot of support out there for you guys. I certainly know from where I come from, everyone I speak to is in massive support of Ukraine, and like you say, it's nice that the people who are running the show won't stop until you're victorious. I like to look at it. I mean, I don't know if you watch a lot of my stuff, but I've always tried to not really toe the line too much with politics. I know it's heavily politically dominant, this war, and your opinions may be maybe considered as being political, but I always try to base my thoughts and my feelings from a strong moral standpoint of what I believe to be a strong moral standpoint anyway, based on my time in the Royal Marines. You know, we were always we were always taught about what was right and wrong. It's not just about being in the military and doing everything the way people perceive us to do. So I've always tried to have my comments based off of what I think is from having a strong moral compass, you know. And I think the rest from having that, I can see how many other people support those moral alignments that I have. A lot of people don't like what's going on over there. Not for political sake, but for the normal guy, for the normal woman who's suffering in their homes, for the children who are being disrupted, not able to go to school and stuff. So it's interesting how, you know, the whole world is the same thought pattern, or at least from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, because what I was scared of the most as a communications person is that I was scared that Russian propaganda was gonna win. You know, I mean, Russian propaganda is basically their main weapon. It always was. They created propaganda,
Yeah.
and the reason why Russian Bolsheviks were so successful was because they had successful propagandists, basically, and of course, the war is like a horrible outcome, right? But uh, actually, it would be much worse, like had they invested more into their informational warfare, creating more pro-Russian parties, make Ukrainians fight against each other and stuff. Instead of that, they launched a bunch of missiles at Ukrainian cities, and they united Ukrainians in just like instantly.
It's done the opposite, is what it seems anyway. What do you think that's down to then? A mixture of mistakes on Russia's behalf, or a number of good things happening in Russia? Do you think that's down to them making mistakes, or does that show something else about the type of people that they're messing with in Ukraine? There's a strong sense of unity there, but why? Where does that come from?
Ukrainians have this very distinctive feature. We can self-organize very, very fast. We have it. It's like our national stuff. We can self-organize very fast. We don't need leaders to do that, which is interesting. And the origin of this is because anarchy was born in Ukraine.
Right.
Yeah, so we had Nestor Makhno, who actually introduced anarchy as like working, type of management, and it worked. Not for long, but it did, because it's like very, very close to Ukrainians who mostly lived in like villages, in small communities, and those communities were able to care about themselves and cooperate and trade with other communities, and we lived like that for like centuries, if not thousands of years. And speaking of Russians, their so-called special operation that resulted basically in a total failure, and led to a mobilization, basically. Currently, there's a bunch of protests that started around Russia in different cities. Do you believe if those protests will be successful or change anything?
What do you mean, change the thought pattern of Ukraine or the world?
The protests against this mobilization that was announced.
All right, from Russia, the Russian people. Yeah, this is the thing. I think you can only hide how your own people are feeling for so long. We live in the technological age now where information is so widely available. It's going to be really hard to disguise the thoughts and feelings that's truly going on there. And if they're against that mobilization, we're going to find out about it sooner or later. That's for sure. Those types of things aren't going to sit well with many people. And if there's one or two voices loud enough, we're going to hear them. And it's just the whole mobilization thing. Is it really going to work anywhere when they've been utilizing prisoners, I believe, in certain regions? It tells you that there's a level of desperateness that I don't know. It's a good question. I don't think I don't think the mobilization will work. And if there's one or two people against it within the rank structure, then you know how it is yourself when you're amongst people. If it's a bad idea and one guy voices his opinion, that guy can change the thought pattern of 50, 100, 200 people in a heartbeat. So that's all it takes, really. A couple of people to be against what's going on for the masses to just say, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't for us. What are we actually fighting for? That tells a massive story if they haven't mobilized a lot of their population. Is it 700,000 or something, I think they were talking about?
They were talking about 300,000 men, but there's this hidden paragraph in this law about this mobilization, so they can basically mobilize as much as they need, and all the details about this number will be classified.
Right. Okay. So it could be a lot more potentially.
Yeah. So they're talking about 300,000, but in reality, it can be like a million or whatever.
And you've got to ask the question. Okay, let's talk about mobilization. Let's pretend that everyone's happy with that. What type of people are getting mobilized? And then we need to look deeper at that, because a lot of their reservist capability at this moment in time is individuals who are not very well trained, haven't really got a military background, or they're veterans who've been out the job for a long time. So even guys who are operating in the field right now in a reservist capacity aren't really the type of soldiers who are going to be winning wars. So is the mobilization going to work in that regard? I don't know. It numbers count to a certain degree, and then it just becomes pointless. You might as well just be, not utilizing them, and it's cannon fodder, isn't it? Really, potentially.
Yeah, totally. It's crazy. By the way, did you ever meet or talk to Russian soldiers, like in the past or recently?
Never. I've never met knowingly. In fact, there's only one person, I'll not name many names, that I realized was she was Russian, but she went through. She's obviously a British citizen now. Went through British Army training and everything. And it's only until I left the military that I put both of them together and think, oh, actually, she was from Russia. She's quite a popular person actually now. She's been on reality TV shows and stuff. So, but I've never knowingly worked with an active Russian soldier or even a former Russian soldier.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the Russian army? And I wonder if your opinion about them changed.
Yes, so here in England we had obviously back in the 80s and 90s, the Cold War, and British troops were mobilized over Germany and various different places with with the constant fear and threat of the Russians coming across the borders, which never happened. Okay, but the fear was there, the statistics was there, and it was all based off this war machine that was. I generally believe a lot of it was all hearsay now. A lot of this in terms of their military capability, it hasn't quite lived up to the expectation. I'm not here to say that they're nowhere near as good as they said they are, or they're not a superpower, because the sheer size of them as a country, the fact that they can mobilize hundreds of thousands at a given notice, it commands a bit of respect, okay? But from what we've seen in Ukraine, it shocked me, because I was expecting initially them to steamroll over Ukraine, and I would have thought they would have been in other countries by now. That was what I was led to believe, just from years and years of, I don't know if it's fear mongering or what, but that was our understanding, that these guys were a powerhouse. and they could literally steamroll over countries, and it hasn't happened in Ukraine. And here we are, 6-7 months in. You know, we were all, the narrative in the United Kingdom was that this war would be over pretty quickly, and they'd be rolling into Moldova and other countries. You know, that was the narrative. So it's interesting. It definitely has changed my opinion, but it makes me think about other countries as well. Maybe you know, other countries that are similar. Maybe they aren't as powerful as they say they are. You know.
Mm-hmm. Like they have this myth about Russia that didn't even start fighting, and it's crazy completely because they at this point, like, they lacked man on February 24th to capture all those major cities that they were about to capture. Then they've lost, like, according to Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, they have lost 54,000 men, multiplied by 3, which means like they have lost almost 100,000 men in, like, killed. Killed in action and wounded. Right. That's at least. So they lack men to perform any more or less efficient offensive operations in multiple locations, and of course they lack men to have effective defense against our forces, because we have a lot of infantry. We don't have we don't have as much artillery as they do, but it doesn't matter as much as it did probably a couple of months ago, because now we can basically perform offensive operations with our infantry that use fast vehicles and pickup trucks and stuff, and currently they're in trouble, and that's why this mobilization, basically, it's a sign of a desperation, I would say.
I think so. I mentioned that last night on a live stream, that it tells a story, you know, of their current situation, and the whole fact that you just mentioned you have a lot more infantry soldiers than Russia. That's evident in the northern counteroffensive that took place. I was trying to think, like, without having too much information on the ground. I was trying to study the map. Why was that much ground taken in such a short period of time? And I put it down to two things. Obviously, you know, the Ukrainians have definitely seized an opportunity to push hard and push forward. You can only really do that if you've got enough infantry troops to be able to do people don't realize this. Artillery is good for certain things, but when push comes to shove, the final thrust of action always ends with an infantry soldier. Unfortunately, it's just how it is. It's man against man, and if you've got more infantry soldiers to do that final unfortunate task, then you're obviously going to take land very quickly, aren't you? And that's what happened with that counteroffensive. And I think if the Oskil Reservoir didn't exist, if it wasn't there, I think they would have pushed them back even further. You know, I think by the grace of God, the Oskil Reservoir is there, and it's kind of put a bit of a halt on the situation. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think so, absolutely. Currently, there's a combat near Liman, and the situation there is a bit different because they have Liman as not as flat as there's like different types of landscape.
Okay.
Let's say, but it can be used for our benefit as well. But it's like, it's one of those things that make this counteroffensive a bit slower, probably, in my opinion. Okay, I wonder. Like the reason why I asked you about the Russians is because they had this this advertisement around them, like about being like undefeatable army and stuff.
Yeah.
And for example, us during this air raid on Hostomel Airport, we were kind of surprised in the beginning by all those helicopters, those Ka-52 alligators, but eventually we realized that even those so-called flying tanks, they could be easily shot down using just old Soviet Igla manpads. Um, and of course, their elite paratroopers received quite some beating from our conscripts, by the way.
Yes.
So yeah, so there's like a lot of advertisement that was surrounding their army and their like helicopters and missiles and stuff. This is how the informational warfare works, basically.
Hmm.
I wonder if you participated in military exercises with Ukrainians.
So I know that myself, I never participated in exercises with Ukraine per se. Whether or not that's the case still with the Marines, I'm not too sure. But we do participate a lot on exercises with other militaries from around the world, depending on who they're affiliated with, obviously. But we do a lot of training in the northern flank in Norway. With the Dutch Marines, I'm speaking from my experience. The US Marines are out there quite a bit doing Arctic warfare training, but it's mainly to protect that flank from a potential invasion, really, to make sure that we're ready to go in those conditions if need be. And the Norwegians, the Nordics, and the Scandinavians tend to do a lot of training out there. Marines, we're quite specialised within that field. Arctic and it's technically Arctic and mountain warfare. So yeah, me personally, I've unfortunately never been able to work with Ukrainians, which would have been a nice experience. The guys that I have worked with in Europe have all been very similar in nature, actually, but formidable soldiers. But the Dutch Marines is probably my closest association with anyone from Europe, that I've worked with. So
Yeah, absolutely. We have experience of cooperating with the Royal Irish Regiment. So in 20
okay.
yeah, in 2016 we had those military exercise in Yavoriv. So it's like peacekeeping training center in the western
Yeah,
part of Ukraine,
I think
and
I remember that.
yeah, and we had like for the first time in the history of modern Ukraine, the Brigade of the National Guard participated in those military exercise, and there were those guys from the Royal Irish Regiment, and they were watching our training. So we had a scenario where our guys had to take control over a dam that was defended by the OP4, and each platoon had to take it, like in turns, and they all picked different tactics. So some of those guys tried to sneak like across the swamp, like ninja style. Others started
Getting the
like
feet
a
wet.
yeah. Others started like a bloodbath with like artillery support and like, oh my god, it was so crazy. I hope that I still have some videos from that. Not sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but it was cool. But as for the Royal Marines, can you tell more about them? I mean, from what I know, you guys were like smaller in number comparing to
Yeah.
the U.S. Marine Corps, for example, but you were
Oh,
more
massively.
specialized and like elite, like
Yes. So
like a rapid response force, basically.
yeah. So we are amphibious infantry is by default very small in number, but certainly not in stature. So we hold we're part of 3 Commando Brigade, and we have certain elements of the army attached to us for artillery and engineering support, but we're completely self-sustainable, which means that we can deploy independently at a moment's notice and be able to carry out operations globally. Due to the nature of our skill sets, we, although we're amphibious by nature, we, like I said before, our main specialization tends to be mountain and Arctic warfare. So that's where we're to be expected to operate if need be. But we're also quite well equipped to go and fight in the jungles if need be at a specialized level as well. So the company that I went to, my first company as a fighting Marine, was a jungle warfare troop slash company. So I was actually away from all the cold weather and mountains. I was, you know, my kind of job in that company certainly was in tropical environments and jungleless warfare. So I was quite lucky in that respect because I don't like the cold that much.
Same here.
But yeah, so we quite a diverse and adaptable fighting force. I think that was the key thing that was taught to me when I was going through commando training, was the difference between us and a lot of people is that ability to adapt to situations that might not be your bag, but you've got to just get over it and overcome it. You know, I mean, we went from amphibious infantry to fighting in the Falklands, you know, and marching over, you know, dozens and dozens of miles, and then fighting at the very end, to, you know, going back to our amphibious capability to then fight 10, 15 years in Afghanistan in desert warfare. And, you know, that shows how diverse and adaptable we are. And we're at the spearhead of that infantry group as well. So, you know, at the basic level of infantry, you've got the guys who do a great job in the army. And then at the tip of the spear for basic infantry, you've got the Parachute Regiment and the Royal Marines Commandos for the Navy. And then you've got one more step above them, Special Forces. And literally most of the Special Forces across all of the SF group, over 50% are Royal Marines. So that tells a story, you know. Most guys who end up Special Forces have come from that background, Parachute Regiment or Marines, you know.
Yeah. So this basically sounds very familiar to me, because we spent many days like marching, doing huge distances with like all of our equipment, and in the end, in like 3 days, for example, of this marching and spending nights like in the field, we would arrive to a tactical field with like targets and stuff, and relieve ourselves, let's call it this way.
Yeah.
I was so unlucky because I've spent 3 days in a forest with my backpack that probably it was something like 40 kilograms, like 40 kilograms combined with my armor and helmet and my ammunition and additional ammunition and stuff. And I was like, I was dying. I thought, oh my god. So
It's hard.
it's really hard. And when we arrived to the tactical field where we were supposed to fire at targets and stuff, our battalion commander told us, like, guys, this is how it is. Like, you will spend 90% of your time doing useless crap and tiring crap. You will get tired a lot, and in the end, you will arrive to your destination. That's when the real fight begins, after all those tortures. And so our guys went shooting. My platoon didn't, because we were covering like we were like in the reserve, and we were so we were like very disappointed because everybody was, so they burned down the forest. And we do that often, and we were like just watching them
have fun.
Yeah, good luck,
Yeah,
guys.
I know what you mean. It's I think people can have a glamorous idea of what infantry soldiering may be like, but the reality is a lot of it is hard graft, carrying heavy things. I like the class what we did is we're basically human mules. We're human mules expected to carry things for long periods of time, and then at the end nothing might happen. Like what you've just described there. That's pretty commonplace, isn't it? Really. But you have to be ready to fight at the end nonetheless, irrespective of your condition. So that's when I think hard military training serves a real good purpose in that regard. And I think we're seeing that play out almost like a playbook with Russia and Ukraine at this moment in time. You can tell who's cut corners training wise. You can tell who's been putting in the work. Because there's no lies on the battlefield. The truth will be revealed, so to speak, in your performance, and there's no greater show to perform on than a battlefield at the end of the day, and the story will all come true. Who's been putting in the work, really? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like comparing to what we had previously, since 2014 to 2021, for example, we would spend like 99% of our time just dragging random cargo from place to place and digging trenches and stuff like that. Like 1% of that time would be actual like combat, fighting, or just waiting until they stop shelling us, something like that. But this invasion, it changed. Like it's very different because the intensity of combat is dramatically higher. They, like, at the positions where my guys are at this point, they have like 3-5 attacks per day.
Really?
It's very hard.
That must be stressful for the guys on the ground, though, right?
Yeah, in Rubizhne and Severodonetsk, there were like just constant attacks. Those shellings would never stop completely. So yeah, it's very different because Russians try to push as hard as possible to take control over as much territory as possible. And in Rubizhne and Severodonetsk, they were successful, but they have lost, oh my god, so many men. I wonder if you have like service dogs in Royal Marines.
So we used to, I believe, a long time ago, but it's so how I said we have an aspect of self-sustainability. We can, that's 99% true, except there's certain jobs in which you'll have to draft in, albeit under the umbrella of 3 Commando Brigade. So a lot of the time they'll either have to go through the All Arms Commando course to be able to work under the umbrella, or in cases where you need dog handlers and stuff like that, it would be I believe the Royal Military Police used to have dog handlers, but I think it's a veterinary corps or something now. It's where animals are specifically trained with soldiers in specialist capacities. But if we needed those, it would be more than likely, in our role anyway, it would be a military police specialization where you'd utilize dogs for things. I think anyway. That's my guess. But special forces certainly have dogs attached with their sections or troops. They're actively utilized. I know when the lads was out in Afghanistan, my company, the first unit I went to, 40 Commando, they had dogs with them, but they were for very specific tasks, utilized similar to how special forces would use them, but also different by the nature of our work compared to what special forces do. I mean, they're doing some neat stuff, aren't they, really, at the top end of the sword? So
yeah.
What about yourselves? Do you guys actively use dogs and stuff regular for?
Not in my brigade. Usually we use them for like demining, for EOD stuff. But I know that the Israeli army, basically they have this special force unit that has dogs that are trained to kill.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are crazy.
Yeah. I've actually got a story. Those dogs, the special forces dogs. I'm want to make this clear. I'm not going to give any information that I know on special forces or anything like that. But in certain capacities, they will use. So if special boat service, for instance, they're going to naturally, if they need anyone to be utilized for their training, to do the crap jobs, so to speak, or the crap training serials, they'd more likely be would use a Royal Marine, because it's just a natural thing. Just like the parachute regiment would probably get utilized for the SAS for their training serials. And one of the first things I ever did as a young Marine was I was involved in some training with the Special Boat Service, and it wasn't for my benefit at all. I had to dress up as a foreign insurgent, so to speak, and I had a car with me and everything, and I had a fake Kalashnikov. And special forces, they came in and they were doing this serial where their dog would be doing exactly what you said, but I didn't realize the dog they were using, in my young naivety as a young Marine, was an actual killing machine. This thing had a lot of confirmed kills, right? And as soon as it seen me, they got off the mock helicopter. This dog wasn't on its lead, and it should have been. And it just came running towards me. It had about 100 meters to go. And I was thinking, oh, this dog's coming towards me pretty quick. And I just heard someone shout, "Get in the bloody car, get in the car." And I was like, so I tried to get in the car wouldn't open. I jumped on the back. I ended up having to get into the window. But in a nutshell, I got into this vehicle with seconds to spare. And one of the guys came to tell me, he says, "You know how close you were to literally getting your arm ripped off?" I went, "No." He says, "That dog would have killed you, no problem." I was like, "All right, thanks for telling me." But that was one of my first experiences in the military. So, yeah, those dogs, they're can be very, very what's the word? Useful. Let's put it.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's crazy. You could have been like eaten.
Yeah, and it wasn't that big, It was like a small. I can't remember what type of dog. It was like a very small German Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what type of dog it was, but yeah, well, I mean, it would have done me some damage, that's for sure.
Oh my God. Okay. Not sure if our viewers know about this tradition, but in the Allied armies, the soldiers often exchange patches. So
Yeah.
I have some stuff here that I will send
Oh,
to you
nice.
as soon as you drop me your address or whatever. So
Awesome.
this is the patch of my brigade, and
Fantastic.
in order to receive this, I had to run like 10 kilometers.
Wow.
Yeah, in my vest and stuff. So yeah, I would be very honored to send you my patch.
Thank you very much. Likewise, I'll send you one or two things as well. I'll make sure I run 10 kilometers though when you give me your patch.
No problem. I think that you have like as a Royal Marines Commando. I think that you ran much more distance than I did.
Well, I think you're certainly probably making up for it now though with what you're dealing with in Ukraine. So yeah, my utmost respect towards you and your fellow servicemen.
Yeah, my brothers are heroes. That's true. I always wanted to ask a British citizen about it.
Mm-hmm.
What were your feelings about the Salisbury story?
What you on about the chemical attack?
Yeah, those two idiots that were caught on any CCTV in Salisbury.
What year was this again? So I can figure out where I was. Hang on.
It was like
because hang on. Let me get this up 2 seconds. All right. Yes. So I just left the Marines at the time, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite. I believe it or not, I was thinking, was this potentially the start of something bigger in the grand scheme of things? And I remember feeling very it's a strange one. This, I don't know if you'll be able to relate to this. Maybe it's when you're a full civilian again, you might understand. But when I left the Marines, I felt almost. It's a stupid comparison. I felt a little bit naked in the sense of I haven't got that safety net anymore. I haven't got that. If anything was to happen militarily, war or anything towards the United Kingdom, I would much rather be part of that group than be a civilian. Just off my knowledge and understanding, I'd feel safer with my guys, even if I was involved in doing some pretty dangerous stuff. And I remember at that time feeling, well, if anything kicks off here, I'm just a normal guy now. And that made me feel quite vulnerable, you know. I
Yeah.
remember at the time, but it did blow over pretty quickly. It didn't materialize into anything too much. Obviously, the media were kicking the arse out of it a lot. But yeah, for me, I guess it wouldn't be a true understand because I just came out the military at the time. So I was feeling quite different about the situation, you know. But I know my family were quite worried about it, whether or not that sort of thing could happen in a village near us soon, you know. So it did send a little bit of fear into us. I'm not sure how you guys perceived the whole situation in Ukraine.
It was, we weren't much surprised, but on the other hand, we felt like really bad for British people because like you don't want two idiots just break into your country and kill a bunch of people, poison them with like gas, not like gas,
Exactly.
the chemicals. It sucks.
Yeah, I mean it's as bad as it gets, really. Without yeah, it was terrible when you think about it. But yeah, it's I'm just glad it didn't materialize and escalate into something far worse, you know.
Yeah.
But we're lucky. I think there's plenty of opportunities for things to escalate, and I like to count myself lucky. I think that's one thing that this whole Ukraine situation has made many people feel. Before this happened, you know, we might have had a lot of things to complain about, especially with lockdown and stuff. And then, you know, we see normal people in Ukraine who we can relate to on a day-to-day level. Their lives have been turned upside down. Regular people, you know, and that's the thing that I think unites most people in this. It's the sense that we can understand and have a level of understanding and compassion for what you're potentially going through, because you know the day before, a week before, you guys are just getting on with life, and in certain areas of Ukraine, granted,
Yeah.
you know. And it can happen anywhere, really. If it can happen in Ukraine, it can happen elsewhere, that's for sure, especially on the Russian border.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, we have almost 2,000 viewers.
It's a lot, man.
Yeah, and our mercenary moderator Janine is doing her best to eliminate as much Russian bots as possible in the chat.
That's tough.
And we have a question from Mike Watson. What does Ryan think of second lieutenants with the map and compass? How important are NCOs in this war? A very obvious question. And what does Starsky think? So, what's your opinion on second lieutenants with map and compass?
Right, I don't know if you've got. Look, you probably have the same type of opinion on young officers. They're notoriously known for being terrible at map reading, and it's the one thing that, as a young troop officer, you should be phenomenally good at. Bearing in mind you're coordinating the movements for that troop that you're commanding, or platoon if you're in the army. I have to be honest with you. I'm going to break the tradition. My first troop boss, was fantastic. Very, very good. And I didn't have any problems. However, after that, some of the map reading I seen from young officers was actually utterly terrible. And most of the time, it's the junior non-commissioned officers who end up taking over. The true, you know something, I don't know if it's the same in Ukraine. The true unsung heroes in any military organization, in Britain anyway, is 100% the corporals, the lance corporals and the corporals. Them are the guys who run the show. Them are the guys who get morale up. Them are the guys who, prep the lads ready to fight and get the job done. They're the senior. They might be junior in the sense of leadership, but they're the senior in sense of the soldiers on the ground fighting. So all of the corporals that I met in the Royal Marines, the ones who were at fighting companies, fantastic individuals. Really, it really doesn't work without them. I don't know what your experience of them was, but yeah, bosses very, very useful if you have a good one. But if you don't, your corporals and your sergeants are the guys who run the show anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that might be unpopular.
Absolutely. The corporals are those on the ground, responsible for basically everything, responsible for the success of this operation, whatever they do. Guys who spend all of their time together with their guys. They supposed to know everything about their soldiers.
Absolutely,
everything. Their birthdays, their problems, their like political views, whatever, hobbies.
You've got to know what gets you guys going as well, and it's a tough ask. The sergeants, the corporals, them are the guys who get it done. And again, not taking anything away from officers, they have an extremely valuable and important purpose. Hence, the training is longer and harder in most cases than a regular infantry is. It certainly is in the Royal Marines anyway. They do twice the training. Phenomenal individuals. But again, like any command structure, it only works effectively if all of those command positions are in place,
Yeah. There's a question. As I understand it, Russia doesn't have pro NCOs. They depend on permanent officer corps. Right or wrong?
Yeah, I think that's true, right?
Basically, yeah.
How are they not restructured? Why are they not wanting to restructure? That is beyond my. No one across that's globally accepted that you don't. That's not good, right?
Yeah.
We figured this out hundreds of years ago.
It's like there's a bunch of guys. The officer goes like, you will be a sergeant. It's like, okay. And then, and then the officer doesn't give a damn about it, like at all. And if something bad happens, this sergeant probably the one to blame, because the officer will tell him like, but you were a sergeant, you were supposed to do something. And he's like I do the same stuff every private does. I'm not
I've just been given a position, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a position that doesn't change anything whatsoever.
Yeah, I still don't understand. I still don't understand their thought pattern behind it. That's one thing. Not that I want them to have any advantages when they're fighting, especially in Ukraine, but they do realize that one change would literally change a hell of a lot about how they work together on the battlefield. Like, even if like, let's say me and you got 20 men and they weren't trained in military capacity at all, and we literally explained to them what these ranks are, what they do, and the purpose, and selected individuals for those job roles, okay?
Yeah.
And they tried at least to act like that job role, we would get real good results out of that, even though they're not trained, because there's always someone to look up to. Does that make sense? And there's always someone to fall back on. And you don't, even if you didn't have a trained guy, that concept still works in theory. So I don't know. It's hey, look, it's just the way it is, I guess, and it's gonna work against them. That's for sure.
Yeah, and there's a very nice commentary from Richard Parnell. is the lack of NCO in the Russian army more a lack of trust? And I think, yeah, I completely agree with that, because like in the Russian army, um, we had that problem in Ukrainian army too. Before we created our NCO corps, we had that problem too. So they don't trust anybody. Like
Wow.
they want to make sure everything's in order. That's why you gotta check everything yourself. That's why their lieutenant has a complete responsibility, and he has to do all the NCO stuff. He has to solve problems with the soldiers in case they have some problems. Like
Hmm.
everything that NCO would do, this officer has to do, including all of his duties, planning, and oh my god. So you can imagine just how big kind of a head this lieutenant has.
Yeah.
He's like loaded, and they don't sleep often.
No, I mean it's a hard enough job anyway, isn't it? With corporals and sergeants. Um, yeah, it's just something that I was only made aware of that about a few months ago. Maybe it's a few weeks into the war in Ukraine. That's how Russia structured their troops.
Yeah.
And if it is down to a trust issue, then does that not tell you that let's just say they did have corporals and sergeants on the ground who are actively trained? Does that mean there's more chance of those soldiers rebelling against the orders that they have if they found out truly what the meaning behind those orders are? Because if it's politically motivated, the guys on the ground, the juniors, the soldiers, will be the first to say, this is a load of rubbish, I'm not taking part in this. But if they're actively managed effectively by an officer,
Yeah.
then that makes sense. That can kind of cover the tracks a little bit.
It's crazy. Okay, let's switch to our favorite topic. One of my friends asked about Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury. In your
Yes.
opinion, will we be able to see this fight anytime soon? Because they make like controversial commentaries and stuff.
I think that fight will happen, whether or not. You look, boxing right now is a very different beast to what it used to be in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. It's an event. It always was an event, but the boxers fought everyone back in the day. There was none of this, oh well, we need to make this work and that work. They just made it happen. At the end of the day, it's just two men fighting. You can make
Yeah.
that happen anywhere, and people will watch if they support that, right? You could have Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury fight in a local park, put some cameras there, people are going to tune in. So it's not about the fighters now. Now it's not. It's more than that. It's about the boxing politics is a huge thing, and the promoters behind it. So Eddie Hearn and these other guys, they control these events. They for whatever reason, they dictate when it happens. Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury will happen when the promoters come to an agreement, and it's got nothing to do with the fighters. Like Usyk, look at that man. The amount of respect I have for that man. He was fighting on the front lines, and then he's kicking ass in Saudi Arabia the next. How you don't get any more of a real life superhero than that. I love that guy. I think he's a fantastic sportsman. And as is Tyson Fury, I believe he's the modern day greatest of our generation, just based on the fact that he's nearly 7 foot tall. He's nearly 20
Yeah.
stone. Like there's some giants you can beat, and there's some you just can't. And I think he's just too big in this era to be beaten by anyone on the planet. That's my honest opinion. But in terms of if Tyson Fury wasn't there, if Tyson Fury was 6 inches smaller, he gets beat off most guys. I think his height is his greatest attribute. So let's not take anything away from Alexander Usyk. But I don't think it's going to happen as soon as we think, because I think Tyson Fury should have fought Anthony Joshua 2-3 years ago. That never
Yeah,
happened.
probably.
That should have happened when they were both champions in their own right. Now it's going to happen with with Anthony Joshua relatively a nobody now. He's been beaten conclusively twice off the far better man. You know.
Yeah. I respect Tyson Fury so much because I read his story, and like from what I remember, he started.
Phenomenal.
He's crazy, and like all
Yeah.
those transformations that he went through, and oh my god, there's like there's like boxers that okay, let's say they were talented, or like they were born this way, right?
Yeah.
And then there were boxers who put a lot of effort into becoming successful, and
Absolutely.
that's Tyson Fury, 100%.
100%. Yeah. Their entire family. So they live not too far away from me, actually, on the west side of where I'm from. When I was a young lad, I fought his cousin, Tyson Fury's cousin, twice in the amateurs. So I know
Really?
the family. Yeah, I know the family. And they're all tall. Like his cousin, it was like 6'4" or something at 13 years old when I fought him. They were tall dudes, right? But the gypsies, they're a tough fighting breed. When we want to classify people as something, you have to classify the gypsies as a true fighting breed, because they are. Whenever you're fighting in England and you're up against a gypsy, you know you're going to be in a fight. That's for sure, because they've been doing it all their life, and there's a level of respect that you have to have for that. Because most guys who get into boxing that I knew, we just came from maybe bad backgrounds, but we certainly hadn't been fighting since we were 1-2 years old. You know,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Just like a comparison of, the Ukrainians, fantastic soldiers. How many of them have been actively fighting since 2 or 3 years old? Like the Afghans. The Afghans are fighting people with weapons. They've been doing it since the beginning of time. They're a true fighting people, and that's why they were respected. You know, the same as the gypsies in UK. Do you have gypsies in Ukraine who follow the same type of path?
Not really, not really. We have
No?
like different. We have like gypsy nationality in Ukraine, not like those guys
Not
in
like
not
in
like yours.
England.
Yeah.
Like,
Uh,
okay, yeah.
what kind of sports do you like besides boxing?
I never used to like this sport, but I've grown to really appreciate it. And I'm a massive fan of MMA now, just off the sheer skill set that you need to fight at a very basic level. Like if you go to a local fight that no one knows about, no one's heard about, it's not being promoted, it's not shown on TV. You go to a local MMA fight, you're going to see guys who no one's heard of, who know a little bit of jiu-jitsu, know a little bit of karate. Some of them are black belts. Some of them have got, multiple skill sets in many different mixed martial art areas, and no one hears of them. And that's like, these guys are fighting just local people, and yet the amount of skill that they've got is phenomenal. So I've learned to appreciate MMA an awful lot now, because there's no such thing really as a journeyman in MMA, whereas there is in boxing. That you can literally just put some gloves on and fight someone if you want in the professional ranks of boxing. You can, but you can't really do that in MMA, because no one wants to get the neck snapped,
Yeah.
or the ankle broke, But I like MMA. Weightlifting's probably my go-to form of exercise right now. Many people might not class it as a sport, but it's one of my biggest loves, being in the gym lifting weights. What about yourself? What do you like to do to chill out?
Shooting.
All right. How is shooting actively available in Ukraine?
Yeah,
Obviously, minus war, but
So in Ukraine, you cannot have like a handgun, except for like rubber, the one that shoots rubber bullets.
Okay.
You cannot have handguns that shoot live ammunition. But you can definitely have like rifles, carbines, like anything like that, shotguns. And I like shooting because my dad was a military, and for the first time in my life, I shot AK. Uh, no, it like RPK,
Hmm.
light machine gun, when I was 4 years old. So yeah, it was like back in the Soviet times.
That's
Uh,
awesome,
s-
man.
yeah, Slav style. So we went to this like shooting range. So it's like area in Chernihiv is called Honcharivska. We have like
Mm,
huge training grounds, and our tank brigade, uh, the first Siversk tank brigade, is located there. It's like their base, and they're training there often. Before it started being called First Siversk Tank Brigade, it was a Soviet tank brigade. It was like Soviet
mm,
times, uh, and we went there. My dad loaded the magazine with just tracing rounds, only tracing rounds, and
awesome, man.
yeah, I was like, sh- so I was like a little guy. I'm not a big guy even today, but
Yeah.
anyways, and I was like holding this RPK. My dad was just standing behind me holding myself so I wouldn't shoot
That's
the
awesome.
soldiers or something. And there was like a small wooden like house. Uh, they used to keep coal there, but
Hmm.
it was empty. And he said like just shoot everything into that house, and I was shooting that RPK and like looking at those tracers just going inside that house and ricocheting inside. It was so cool.
That's
So
awesome, man.
yeah, yeah, it was like
Four
my
years old.
yeah, first experience.
Wow. First time I shot a weapon system was I was 16 when I first entered the military, and it was exhilarating but terrifying at the same time. But the amount of kick that you got from then our standard weapon, the SA-80, it wasn't as much as I thought it would be. You know,
Yeah,
it didn't really do much, and then I got my hands on a general purpose machine gun, the big heavy thing, 7.62, and wow, the difference is phenomenal. I mean, if you're firing one of those things at people, the receiving end, they'll definitely be getting their heads down into cover, you know.
yeah,
But it's the fact that you got to do that at 4, that's phenomenal, man.
it's Slav
Yeah,
style.
yeah.
So uh, in your recent stream, you said that you wanted to make a podcast with Dennis Davidov.
Yes, absolutely. I have a great. I respect the guy, you know, just like yourself, all right, but for very different reasons. Me and you've got a shared brotherhood that not many people get the opportunity to have. We know that we've both served in the military. You're still actively serving. If I was to see you and we found and when we were speaking to each other and we found that we were both in the military, that you know that there would be an element of great respect there instantly. You can't
Yeah,
have that with anyone else that hasn't. We don't like to admit it, but it's just not the same with those who haven't been in. You can still respect someone greatly, but the level of respect that we will have for each other, we don't know each other, but we know each other, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Whereas Dennis, it's different. It's that guy, at least as it appears, has no military experience, but he articulates the war in such a way. He's got such intellect on the subject. I admire him for putting the work in and covering the war and giving us such great information. You know, I literally, he is one of my sources of information on the war in Ukraine. And the guy has no military experience, so to be a lot of the time he's actually tactically quite correct on things as well. That's evident of his intellect. You know, you got to be a smart guy to understand tactics. That's the reason I wasn't an officer, you know, and that's the reason he's a pilot. Quite clearly a bright man, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there any other Ukrainian YouTubers you'd like to have podcast with?
So there's yourself. We've managed to get that ticked in the box, so thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
You're top of the line. I'm really grateful, by the way, for that. Dennis, and unless I've got a terrible memory, forgive me. I don't really think I know anyone else unless you would mention names and it refreshed my brain. But you guys are pretty much my main source of information, really. There's a guy in America who I think's pretty good, a combat veteran, Reacts. I can't remember
Yeah,
his first
yeah.
name. I like his stuff. He's pretty neat. But other than that, it's pretty much you two, I guess.
Okay, speaking of our army days, what is your craziest story from the army?
Okay, so in terms of stories that I think people would expect to hear, and stories that I think is meaningful to me, is just how I actually got into the military in the first place, believe it or not. That's something that I hold dear to me, because in truth, I wasn't really, in my honest opinion, from the life that I lived and how I grew up, it wasn't really expected to be something that was a possibility for me to earn a green beret. You know, this thing here, just off the way things went. So my greatest kind of military story is actually how I ended up into the Marines and achieving something which meant something so dear to me, you know, because I actually went into the Royal Marines twice. I didn't make it the first time. I'm a product of the large percentage of people who try and fail. I was a product of that. And I was also a product of how that makes you feel for a number of years. And a lot of guys actually go down a bad route, having failed something that they were so close to achieving greatness with. And for me, I went down a terrible route. I was 16. I entered the commando training, and I got most of the way through training. Didn't know how, because I still couldn't really gauge what the Marines was at that age. I didn't really understand deeply what I was getting myself in for. I was very naive. I was extremely fit, but very naive, and mentally wasn't very robust. I just fell through every day. Eventually, you get caught. You get caught out if you haven't got the will to get through it enough. You'll eventually not make it, and something as hard as that anyway. And if you have any problems mentally or physically, those will they will rear their ugly head at some point and catch you out. And it did with me. I didn't realize I was dealing with a lot of mental problems, mental issues. I was grieving heavily from a death in the family, and I didn't realize that was messing me up quite a bit. And then I ended up leaving the military, going down a terrible route in life. Ended up in trouble with with the police, getting involved in petty crime, fighting. Ended up working as a bouncer at a very young age, getting involved in all of the things that bouncers would do at that age, fighting, you name it, nightclubs, you know the scene, and just going down a real bad route. When eventually I don't know what, I got sick of not living anymore, because I wasn't living at that age, and I was still having that regret of not making it through commando training. So I went back on a 2-year cycle of just getting my mind ready physically and mentally and spiritually to be able to say, right, I'm going to do this course again. And I'm really going to put everything into it. So much so that I actually achieved it and passed everything first time. The second time around I went in, I didn't have any problems with everything. I smashed everything. I made it to the end of training as an original. Out of 90 people or something that started training, there was like 9 or 10 of us there as originals, and I was one of them. So that for me is the most meaningful story For me personally, anyway. I know that's maybe not the type of story that means that much to other people, but it means a lot to me, you know, because I wasn't destined to be sat here now talking to you, saying I was a Royal Marine, because I wasn't a naturally talented soldier. I worked bloody hard for that. I worked hard for this. If you were to say to me what we are naturally good at, I would be egotistical and say I was a better natural boxer than I was ever a soldier. But I'm more proud of the Green Beret because I worked my ass off for it, and I wasn't relying on talent to get me through that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I know exactly what you feel, because I was a completely civilian person as well prior to this war, prior to 2014. And in 2015, December 2015, I passed through this selection program to my current brigade as a private.
Wow.
And yeah, so I made all this way from like private to first lieutenant.
Wow, fantastic,
So
man.
it was kind of hard because we had I don't remember exactly, like either 50 or 80 candidates, and only something like 20 of them passed.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was
High
kind of hard.
turnaround.
We would run like the whole day. We would be running the whole day, and doing exercise with that huge log and stuff,
Yeah,
and we would get woke, like uh, alarmed in the night and stuff, and we would run again all the night and dig trenches and dig them back and stuff, and uh, we would do like thousands push-ups every day. I
yeah.
thought it's not gonna end.
It feels like that, right?
Yeah, and in
Yeah,
the end, our sergeant, that was among the instructors, among that selection committee, he said, "Guys, it doesn't matter how many times you can actually do push-ups. It's all here."
yeah.
Absolutely.
True. It really is. Mental fortitude.
Yeah.
I think we all share that in the military. In essence, you know, we all like to think we're better than one another. We get told it in training, and we are in some areas. We're not in a lot of others. It's just the nature of how life works. But what I've found is that opening my brain to the possibility that other military groups can be better at certain things than you is the greatest thing I've ever done. And ever since starting YouTube, speaking to people like yourself, I've gained such understanding of what you guys do better than us, what we might do better than you. And collectively speaking, we all work hard for something, and we're all a product of that shared adversity that makes us stronger, mentally and physically. And that's why I think so many veterans or military personnel, active serving, tend to get along, because it's hard to disrespect someone like you. And I know what you've been through in your, you know, we can, in many many life examples, it's patronizing to say I know what you've been through.
Yeah.
Accept the military and training because I know what you've been through, and you
Yeah.
know that I know that, and you know the same for me. And it's not patronizing. We don't take it as patronizing because there's a respect there. That's
Yeah.
the way it is, you know.
Okay, our British servicemen in the UK, are they popular among the ladies? I mean, like, do they have like an advantage over like other
um,
guys?
right, it's funny you should say that because, um, well, me, from personal experience, I married the woman that I was with before the Marines, so I'm fortunate enough to have had her throughout my before and after, you know, before, during, and after the military. From what I've seen in the UK, it can be deemed as so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in the Marines and saying you're a holder of one of these, it does hold a bit of weight. But I definitely, from what I've seen, think it holds more weight in the US, but more weight for the British service personnel. I don't know what it is, but it just seems to hold more weight being British. And if you're in America, then yes, absolutely, it holds a great deal of weight. There's a lot of guys that end up having United States wives and stuff. I'm not sure what it's like in Ukraine, but yeah, in England now, kind of it does. But that's any of the uniformed services. It doesn't really. It's no matter if you're in the army, the navy, the air force, the police, if it's a uniform services, then it kind of does, yes. But Americans, man, them are next level. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. By the way, regarding the Beret, here we had to run like 30 kilometers to be to earn this right to wear a Beret. I had a blue one, but it burned down in Hostomel, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Or
God.
was probably like some Buryat is wearing it right now.
Wow.
Yeah. But so I ran like 4 times because first time I ran with my guys, with my company. Then I was transferred to another company because I was taken to this NCO school in Ukraine. I passed through the school. I got transferred to another company. We were training together, and then I had to run with them as well. So I made another march, and then after a while, I was promoted to second lieutenant.
Fantastic.
As a press officer, because I had like education, so we have this process of I don't know how you call it. Anyways, yeah, as a press officer, I had to run with like all other companies and battalions because I wanted to make like great videos about them and stuff.
Of course, yeah.
So I have like 3 videos out of 4, such marches.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool, and I realized that it's actually much easier to run as a participant than a press officer, because when you're running together with the guys, you have to run around them like a satellite, and make
Absolutely.
videos. It was crazy. So yeah, I have like I ran 4 times.
Oh, wow. To get the same result.
Yeah. Would you like to visit Ukraine when it's safe?
Yeah, there's a part of me would like to visit Ukraine, even though it's not, But again, yeah. The answer would be yeah. I would either way. I would still like to visit Ukraine. Granted, having a family and stuff now, it would be more appropriate to visit Ukraine when it's safe, and I think that day will come sooner than we think. So yeah, answer is 100%. And 2 of my favorite boxing brothers from there as well, the Klitschkos.
Oh yeah.
So that would be pretty cool. I would like to see. That's one thing that. Sorry, we're going off topic slightly. That Usyk's been robbed of is the opportunity to defend his titles in Ukraine. That would be a fantastic moment, I think, for Ukraine, because they need it, man. Who knows? Maybe he's in the short term.
Can you imagine what kind of moral boost it's for Ukrainian soldiers when Klitschko brothers join territorial defense?
I mean, that sense of unity, it's like a virus that'll spread quick, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, you've got 2 of the most, and they weren't just doing it for show. These guys they just proved what they come from and who they are. I think they're symbolic to Ukraine. Strong, tough, stand up for their country, for their women, for their land type people. Because, that type of person is a dying breed in today's world. It's nice to see that, I think we need more alpha male figures like them leading the way in such events, and then they're doing it right now. Fantastic. I loved them before, and I have that much more respect for them now. Everyone does. Everyone respects them, Lomachenko, the same.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. These guys don't have to be there, They do not have to be there. They could be on a beach somewhere, drinking sangria, thinking about all of the millions in the bank. They're on the front. They're there. It doesn't matter if they're on the front line or not. They're there. They're not. If you don't respect that, you're crazy.
Absolutely. I saw this picture of Lomachenko and Usyk, I guess, together in the territorial defense, and it's like it's amazing, like for us, for Ukrainians, because we saw those people as our idols, and because they're warriors, they're fighters.
Absolutely.
And at some point they grab rifles and they go and defend their country.
Yeah.
We were, oh my god, it's hard to even express like what we felt during like first days of this invasion, that
Yeah.
were full of horror mixed with some kind of amazing unity, because we understood that it's like we either die or fight, like without even knowing like what will be the ending point, the destination, the result of this fight. But we still have to do something, because like it's very easy to just give up.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, a lot of Russians at this point, what they do as soon as this mobilization was announced, they went googling how to run away from Russia. It was like the fifth most popular Google search result.
That's
for
crazy.
today.
People are terrified.
Yeah, but again, I was a participant of the Revolution of Dignity. It's not like I don't understand it, but I don't think it's cool, because it's very easy to run away from your country and say whatever, somebody else will change it. I don't care. And it's very hard to, I don't know, make Molotov cocktail and go and fight for your rights, for your freedom.
Yeah.
That's why Russians are so different from Ukrainians.
I agree.
I mean, I saw those protests today.
Okay.
Like in Siberia and like Moscow, people went on the streets. Okay, it's nice. I respect that. They went on the streets. Police started arresting them, and they were like, standing there with like telephones and like recording. In Ukraine, we would have those policemen like destroyed by the crowd.
And that's not happening there.
Yeah.
I think that's like from generations of I don't want to say persecution, but generation of just the way they've been treated for such a long, sustained period of time.
For
it's
centuries,
accepted.
Basically.
Yeah, it's just been accepted that things aren't going to be as free. You're not going to be as, I don't know. Yeah, it's just a conditioning of the brain, isn't it? That's happened over a long period of time, which will take a long period of time to recondition.
So our mercenary moderator is sending us some questions from our viewers, and there's quite a lot of them, by the way.
Great, nice.
Yeah. How's with how is it with your time? I mean, do you have like 25 more minutes to maybe answer
Sure.
questions? Okay.
Absolutely. I have any amount of time for you, mate. Not a problem at all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have a bunch of questions from our viewers. There's a question from Bomber Claude Arte. Sorry, but
Bumper class. that's a
yeah,
good name.
yeah, nice one. Questions for the guys. Have they heard of YouTube channels Speak the Truth and Funker 530?
Yes, Speak the Truth's fantastic as well. He's got guys out in Ukraine, I think, on like the small journalist team, hasn't he? He's another
Yeah,
good guy. Yeah, if you can get him on the show, I think you would have a fantastic time. He's a very, very smart individual as well, like Dennis, very, very smart. Their intellect intimidates me.
yeah, same here. So I have one skit that I actually made with those guys from Speak the Truth here
Oh,
in
did you?
Kiev. Yeah, the one with Dmitry Kiselov that was making a report about Russian tanks in
Okay.
Kiev. Yeah, so those guys were recording. They were helping me recording this video,
Oh, wow.
and the guy that is running after me, that's one of them.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and Funker 530 was on some streams. So we had a fundraiser with the enforcer, and I think that he participated as well.
Funker, is it five? What is it? Sorry.
Funker 530.
Oh, five. Yeah. I don't know if I've seen this channel actually. This is news to me.
There's a lot of videos. I'm his big fan for like years. They
Oh yeah.
they upload a lot of different videos
Oh
from
yeah.
different wars, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just on it now. I'm not actually subscribed, so thanks for that. Yeah, they're doing really good as well. 2.27 million. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. If Russia, Mr. Rain, or oh my God, I'm afraid to butcher the person's name, and unfortunately,
Hey, just go for it. You should take my mentality when I'm trying to pronounce the Ukrainian local villages and stuff. I just go for it and make an absolute dog mess of it.
it's a normal thing because Ukrainian language is actually crazy. I completely admit that. I mean, if so, JP Reinders, I guess, asks if Russians can be pushed back to the border, will there be attacks on Russian soil on tactical targets to probably prevent artillery shelling? Um, so, in my opinion, and according to what I have heard from my guys, there will be zero. Uh, however, however, we're talking about current situation. In terms of this invasion, in terms of our counterattack, probably it won't happen because we don't want to give Russians any chance to, use their nuclear weapons or, justify like their future attacks and invasions
Yeah.
because as soon as one missile falls into a Russian city, I give you 100%. There will be 10 civilian houses destroyed that very day, and there will be like thousands of victims, and all the blame
Yeah.
will be ours. We know how it works, but there's also such thing as Russian war criminals, and we still look for some kind of opportunity to make them face the trial. And the justice can be served in a different ways, probably.
Yeah, I generally don't see it escalating past the Russian border personally. Just from I'm just trying to think of it again. I always try to think of it from a moral standpoint. Ukraine knows better than to get involved into that anyway, because what that would automatically do in Russia's favor is instantly start turning the Russian civilians, because it's the people and masses that can create that can change things really. And if Russia starts getting its own people on board with its decision making, and they can prove that with evidence of Ukraine's attacking them within their home country, then that's just going to feed into Russia's favor, I think, and Ukraine knows better than that, I think. I don't think they would do it just for that reason. One, it's what can they justify from it, and two, they're going to turn Russian the Russian normal people against them, which is going to, the more support Russia has from their own people, the worse it becomes, I think. So, yeah, for them holding out for that very reason, I think will serve in Ukraine's favor far better, personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
But time will tell.
Time will tell. There's very, very good questions. So, Dictator Huilo and Huilo, guys, you gotta know this thing. So, Huilo is a nickname given to Vladimir Putin by Ukrainian people.
Oh.
And basically it means like a how do you call I'm not sure how to call it without getting demonetized.
Yeah.
Anyways, you gotta know it. So the dictator Hulo asks, are we worried that Steven Seagal might come into the battlefield with contactless fighting?
Steven Seagal. Yeah, he might start, training Ukraine's soldiers with that famous Aikido that he does, or Bullshido, as people call it. I did Aikido for a small period of time, right? And I came to the conclusion very quickly that you have to respect it as a martial art form, but it's not the art to fight people with. It's unless you've got a ninja sword and a Roman shield, it's kind of useless, with fists. And I mean that respectfully, because there might be a scenario where you're fighting with swords and it becomes the best martial art you could possibly ever want.
Yeah.
But without that, then yeah, I think it's good for many reasons, but most of them aren't fighting orientated, believe it or not. And I don't know. Yeah, Steve Seagal saves the day.
I think that's because Steven Seagal spends so much time in Russia, probably he's mastering this contactless battle using the Orthodox cross.
Yes. Yeah. Have you seen the? Yeah. Yeah. He has the ability to push people over with nothing other than wanting to do so. Fantastic individual when you think about it.
It's amazing. Yes, you can eat planets with that.
I mean, I'll be honest, I am a fan of his films. I do like his movies. But it's just because he was part of the glory age, wasn't he, of 80s action and 90s action. I didn't know Steven Seagal is... Steven Seagal's pro... I don't like to say pro or he's more for Russia, isn't he?
He lives there.
He lives there?
He lives there.
Okay, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, so the last time we saw him was he came to the occupied territories. So he moved to Russia quite a while ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he grew even bigger.
Yeah, he's a big I nearly swore there. He's a big guy, right?
There's this his recent movie, the special something. So 90% of this movie, he's just sitting in a chair because obviously he's like too tired to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he moved to Russia. He like teaches his bullshido, you know, and and he's a big like Putin supporter. Like I could expect that from Steven Seagal basically because he's an asshole.
Yeah, he's not. He is really. I mean, if you look at didn't he go to North Korea as well? Was that him?
Yeah,
Am I thinking right?
I guess so.
Yeah, you've got to watch those guys who like Aikido. They're strange, man.
Yeah, it's
Have you done like have you been to like an Aikido class before?
no, God forbid.
It's how can I put it? It's like some of the moves that they do only work if it's orchestrated and you comply with the person putting it. Like fighting doesn't. There's no compliance in fighting. You're
Yeah,
doing everything to be not compliant with
yeah,
that person. So that's the bit that I just couldn't get my hand around. I was like, well, unless I'm not taking part in this compliant acting, I'm not going to let you grab my arm like that. I'm going to give you, a punch to the face, and instead, it's like. And again, I don't mean any disrespect on the art form because it is an art form, and that's what I respect about it. But yeah, as an actual, people are missing the point with that martial art being effective for fighting because it's not effective. I think it's for swords, but that's probably why Steven Seagal likes Bullshido because it's a form of acting. It's a form of compliance, isn't it?
probably yeah, yeah, I
You know,
think you're right.
when you
Uh, for example, in Ukraine, we are into like boxing mostly. So like
yeah.
80% of Ukrainian teenagers do boxing
Hmm.
because at some time of like at some period of time we realized that boxing is the most efficient one. You only have like two knuckles and you
Yeah,
have like six punches. That's all.
yeah, it's true.
It's yeah, it's easy. It's effective. Of course, it's popular in the UK because this is
Very
where
popular.
yeah, because this is where this modern boxing was basically born, right?
Conceived, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, so and like 20% 20% of teenagers, the rest of teenagers, they do wrestling,
Hmm.
and I hate those guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this. If you wanted to be effective in, let's just say what the military asks of, if you wanted to be effective at fighting in its rawest form, if you can box and you can do basic wrestling, you're going to be in a very good chance of winning that situation. There's not a greater combination, I think, in some form of wrestling, because 90% of street fights end up on the floor after so many seconds.
Yeah,
But this is what people think, like, oh, well, I learned this and I learned that. If you know how to throw a couple of punches and meaningful punches, the fight probably is over anyway, because most people like how many guys do you know like to think they can fight, but they've never fought in their life? And they would be really surprised what an average boxer could do. Like an average guy who knows how to throw fists would steamroll a lot of average guys who've never fought before.
absolutely.
That's what, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. So if you can throw fists, you're going to be effective. If you can have a very basic ground game, you're going to do well in any kind of fighting situation. If them were the two things I would, if I was to be given a magic wand to be good at, really good, I would choose boxing and wrestling. Although, be it wrestling, I probably shared the same hatred for it as you for a few reasons.
Uh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, I was a kid and I attended boxing for like 2 months already. I was like a pro, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
I thought I was. And then at some point, so I had like a spark, like it's not wasn't like full contact. Okay, we were
Yeah,
kids,
yeah.
but still, like a smaller guy, and because I am not a big guy, I was usually fighting against bigger guys. That's why
Taller guys.
I suck at boxing so much. And he was like smaller, and I was like shorter, and I was like, oh, nice, cool. I'm lucky today. So he like appeared that he was much more experienced, and he was like this uh, out fighter, you know. So he keeps distance. He keeps like
Counter-attack on.
backing up and counter attacking. And the last thing I remember that he broke my nose.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't see it coming.
Yeah.
I Jesus. So yeah, so even an average boxer is like so much better than people can imagine.
You get it right. It's like, and don't underestimate like a couple of months training, like what it can do for you in terms of, well, most military courses, we're talking months. We're not talking years. You can turn someone from a civilian to an absolute animal
Yeah.
in months, you know, with the right trend. So yeah, man, it's never underestimate the power of a few months training, especially in boxing. You know, it can be
Yeah.
really, really impactful. And most
Yeah.
Ukrainians do fight, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we have like those wrestlers. I mean, I do hate and respect them at the same time
Mm.
because they're animals. They so it's like with boxing, actually it doesn't take like too much time to master boxing. You
Just your
can
fists, right? Movement.
yeah, absolutely. You learn how to keep your eyes open even when like you're hit like
Hmm.
punched. You learn like basic like those 6 punches.
Like distance and
Yeah, feel your distance, and it's like practicing,
absolutely.
but it takes less time than to become an average wrestler, for example.
Hmm.
Because when you learn boxing, it's like you suck for like a couple of months, then you start getting some kind of results,
And you've got
growing.
confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
confidence. That's very important because you start like winning finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, with wrestling, it's like you suck for a month, for two, you suck for
Three.
like half a year,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you start
It's true.
understanding something and learning. And after a year, you're like a Superman that can stick like any boxer into the ground
Yeah.
and keep like,
Yeah. It's because I like to put it like this when I think about the two. Whenever you're talking about like boxing, boxing is, although it's an art form, pugilism, it's closely related to, you know, street fighting,
yeah,
which is not an art form. And if you go into a boxing ring, it'll quickly dawn on you that, right, well, I'm probably no good at street fighting, but I need to learn the technique to be good, and I could probably outsmart the street fighter. And then you get guys who have no technical ability whatsoever who can do really well in boxing still.
yeah,
And they'll only ever come unstuck when they meet someone who's technically masterful, like Alexander Usyk, technically
yeah,
masterful, right? Now, you can't do that in wrestling. You can't just brute force your way through the ranks. You got to be technically good all the time. There's no such thing as a non-technical wrestler who's good. You know, there's no such
yeah,
thing as the
yeah,
street fighting version. Oh, I'll come in and I'll bully you. The bully will get his arm broken in seconds off the guy who's technically superior. Whereas boxing, you can kind of get away with. I mean, I wasn't technically great when I was a younger lad. I was strong and I had head movement and I wasn't scared of having a fight. And I did really well against people. I only became unstuck when the guy became more technically advanced, and he didn't he could counterattack and he could move, and my bullying wouldn't work, So that's one way I look at it.
Okay, let's answer probably some more questions, and we are moving to closer to the end of our today's podcast. And by the way, I am absolutely enjoying this podcast. I think that probably we gotta repeat.
Speak again, absolutely.
Yeah, sometime. So, question from Ashley. Question for both gentlemen: which foreign military units would you choose to fight by your side? Your opinion.
So, say the question again.
Which foreign military units would you choose to fight by
Oh, right,
your
okay.
side? Yeah.
So I've worked with French, certain parts of the Norwegian military, the Americans mainly. Now, there's something about the Americans that, although very different to how we did things, there's something about it that, I don't know, it did captivated me a bit. In a different lifestyle, if someone gave me a golden ticket right now and said, "Look, I know you're a British citizen. There's no holds barred. You don't have to sign contracts. You don't have to stay after training, but you're allowed to do this training and document it." I would love to take part in one of the American, like the Navy SEALs or something like that. That to me would be such an experience, because who gets to do that? Who gets to do that? That's something that I don't see many people doing,
Yeah.
Whereas I've seen British guys join you guys and stuff. That's possible. It can happen, but I don't know many people who have left. And not even the UK, Ukraine, France, anywhere. How many of those guys actually get the opportunity to become to pass one of their hard courses? I don't know many. So I think just for the experience and the American dream and the whole symbolism behind, being in the US military, I would love to give one of their hard courses a go. I would love to serve. But working alongside again, the US Marines were fun. They were pretty fun. Like I say, I never got a chance to work alongside you guys. I worked alongside the French, but I wasn't massively impressed, if I'm honest with you. So, but yeah, the US were fun, man. Have you worked with the US before, Starsky?
So we have volunteers, like volunteer fighters from the UK, from Australia and Canada.
Mm-hmm. The Australian guys are good. I like the Australians.
They are badass.
Yeah, they love to fight as well. You talk about a fighting nation, like them guys are hard as nails, man. You've got to understand who the Australians are. They are the worst of us. The worst of the British got sent over there on ships as prisoners to colonize that place. They're the hardest versions and toughest sons of bitches we could get, and we got rid of them. So I love the Aussies, man.
Yeah. So the guy who is still with us since the very first day, since February 24th, because he was at our base at that time. He was visiting his friend, actually.
Oh, nice.
But at the same time, coincidentally, he was a former Australian military soldier.
Wow.
Yeah. So he joined us. After that battle for Hostomel, he joined us, and he still fights, I think.
Yeah.
So, two toughest guys that I personally encountered were from the UK and Australia.
Okay. I would have to say that sounds about right, to be fair. In terms of toughness,
yeah,
the Australians, yeah, they're something else, man. The Australian guys, they don't get enough credit either. Just because where they are in the world, Australasia, where they're predominantly probably is going to operate is very different. But they're tough. They like to drink alcohol as well. I think they're the only nation on the planet that like to drink beer more than us.
Yeah. Oh my God, I was drinking with Australians once. I'm glad that I survived. And so it was a crazy story. There was a guy. So there's a lot of there's a big Ukrainian diaspora in Australia actually,
Hmm.
and those guys they had like either Ukrainian grandma or Ukrainian grandpa or something like that. So
Yeah.
they came to Kiev. We were drinking like all day long, and then we went to a club. And I remember, like, the last thing I remember from that night was I was like sitting with this guy, and he was drinking and crying because uh, in those communities like Ukrainian diaspora related, they like to give their kids Ukrainian names, but those names are kind of old. Like they
Hmm.
like either old or kind of cringy at times.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was drinking with this guy and he was like, I am so sad because I want to meet a Ukrainian wife, but nobody wants. And I'm like, why Ukrainian? Like you, no, like I totally respect that. Why didn't you meet one like in Australia, for example? Are they like,
Yeah.
aren't they good or something? He's like, no, there's another reason. Whenever I talk to a girl and she asks my name, that's what I'm being dumped. I'm like, why?
This is kind of
Because
old Ukrainian
because
then.
my name is a freaking Levko. I was like, I feel you, buddy. It
He should
happens.
change his name, man, or give himself a fake name.
Yeah. Uh, anyways, okay, bro. There's like we're reaching 2 hours into the
Mhm.
stream. I'm absolutely happy to have you here, and I think that probably we should say goodbye to our viewers.
Yeah,
Um, it was a big pleasure to have you on this podcast, and again, you're the first soldier that was invited, which is a great honor to me.
thank you.
Um, Probably we can do it sometime once again.
Let's talk, man. Definitely, I'm more than happy. I would like to have you potentially on my channel at some point as well. It would be great to hear, more of an insight on how you've experienced things over the past 6 months. I'm pretty sure we share a very similar audience, but those that haven't seen you before, which I highly doubt they haven't, I think they'd be great. They'd like to hear what you have to say. So let's talk again, man.
Sure, sure. It will be my pleasure to get invited to your channel. So
Absolutely.
maybe there's something you would like to say to our viewers from Ukraine and
Mhm.
from the free world as well.
Yeah, I guess from the free world first, thanks for stopping by. Make sure you support Starsky, smash the like, share his content far and wide. He's a humble guy. He might not tell you that, but if you share the content, it helps him grow on YouTube, which is important. And for those in Ukraine, keep up the good fight. You're a strong, solid nation, and you've got all the right people behind you, wishing you well. So good luck and keep up the strong fight, man.
Thank you so much, buddy. It's like today I really feel that I found a good friend in the UK.
Absolutely, man.
It,
Likewise in the Ukraine.
it's a big honor to me. Guys, thank you so much for participating. Thank you for staying with us and making fun of Steven Seagal, of course. He totally deserves it. Thank you so much. You are the best. We will see you in the next one. And thanks for watching. My name is Operator Starsky and my good buddy Ryan. Bye bye.